So I actually have to make a little bit of a confession now. I worked myself into a pretty severe case of nerves, just imagining sharing the stage with the speakers that I knew were going to be here today. So a couple nights ago, I was sitting home, basically imagining this very moment, and I felt this almost unnatural kind of focus and calm come over my mind, and everything kind of crystallized down to one salient thought, which was, all I need to do is walk up here and trip and fall hard and then fake an injury, and I'm off the hook. Probably not my proudest moment, but in any case, I'm very glad to be here. I'll tell you a little bit about me. Basically, as far back as I can remember, I've always had this feeling that I am not like other people. I just don't really fit in. It was never anything external, it was always something internal, and especially when I was younger, never really understood why, but that feeling just kind of always stayed. And when I was about 12, my family got invited to a dinner party at the house of some friends of ours, and there was a book there on personality type. So I started reading through this book, and I found a description of a type of person that sounded very much like me, and kind of explained some of these, oddities and differences and this stuff I didn't understand at the time. And even better than that, it explained all kinds of other people to a similar level of detail, and clarity, and insight. And I was totally hooked. It was just a gold mine as far as I was concerned. So I've basically been studying personality type, different models, different applications ever since then. What I do now is I help people find their one unique talent, the one thing that they do better than almost anyone else. I want to share with you one of my favorite questions that I ask people when I'm going through this process with them. We call it profiling. And that question is, at your core, like at the very center of who you are, do you feel like you're basically the same as most people? Or do you feel like, for some reason, whatever it might be, you're just kind of fundamentally different, maybe even a little bit alien? So, okay, who here feels basically the same? Couple people? Who here feels kind of like an alien? A lot of weirdos in the room today. It's okay. It's cool. This question is interesting for a number of different reasons. One of which, though, is almost everyone thinks that their particular answer to that question is universal. If you ask someone that feels basically the same as others, that question, they kind of give you this look like, well, of course, doesn't everybody? And if you ask someone that feels kind of different, they're a little more hesitant because it's kind of like, how'd you know my secret? But they still say, deep down, isn't everybody going to feel basically the same? And the interesting thing about that is they don't. If you stop 100 people on the street and ask them that question, you get about 75 that say that they feel like everyone else, and you get about 25 that say that they feel different for whatever reason. So you've got these two groups of people, and there are actually a number of different qualities and characteristics that they have in common amongst their group, and obviously not with the other group. One of the most fundamental of those characteristics is how we perceive reality in the world around us. For the 75 people, they perceive reality mostly in a kind of direct way through their five senses. They're really good at understanding the world as it is and in adapting themselves to that reality. The 25, their brains operate a little bit differently. They don't perceive reality as directly. Instead, they use this kind of unconscious pattern recognition. We call it intuition. There's nothing magic about it. It's just kind of a mental process. But this means that the 25 kind of live in a different world than the 75. They tend to, among other things, be restless as opposed to content. The 75 are really good at creating a life for themselves that lets them feel content and basically happy and satisfied. The 25 don't really have much of a knack for that. They tend to feel restless, they tend to feel a little dissatisfied, and they tend to always be looking for what's new, what could be, the world as it could be, not as it is. The difference between these two groups of people makes me think of this famous quote from George Bernard Shaw, which you've probably heard. And the quote says, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends upon the unreasonable man or woman." And this basically kind of sums up the difference between these two groups. The unreasonable kind of 25 who aren't really happy with the way things are, and the 75 that are pretty cool with things as they are. Now, when you think about it, all progress does depend on dissatisfaction with things the way they are, to some degree. If you were 100% satisfied with a typewriter for all of your data recording needs, there would be no need to invent a computer or anything beyond that. All progress depends, at least to some degree, on dissatisfaction. But the thing is, that's not all that it takes. If you have someone comes up with a really great idea, great invention, new insight, whatever, it doesn't go anywhere unless you get people that will take that innovation, whatever it might be, and incorporate it into their lives, weave it into the bedrock of our culture, thereby providing a stable foundation for further innovation and further progress. So, a little bit more expanded on that quote, progress depends definitely on unreasonable people, but it depends just as much on reasonable people, and even more on the cooperation between those two groups. The problem is, these groups don't get along very well. We don't treat each other very well. We don't understand each other or communicate very well. We don't trust each other very much. And this is kind of understandable because we don't trust what we don't understand. And we don't understand each other. Another really counterintuitive and somewhat fascinating observation I've discovered while I've been talking with these hundreds of people and helping them find what their greatest talent is. And that is that your greatest gift, your greatest talent, is almost certainly something you are unaware of. It's a mystery to you, almost certainly. And the reason for that is your greatest talent, whatever it might be for you as an individual, is something so intrinsic to who you are, something so close to the core of your being that you are using it all the time. Constantly. You're using it right now to listen to me, to hear the words, and to process the information into meaning. Because you're using it so constantly, it actually ends up becoming a blind spot. It's like asking a fish to explain what water is. Can't do it, because fish can't talk. But, even if it could, to a fish, water is everything. It's air, it's transportation, it's a bathroom, it's everything. How could it know any different? And surprisingly, that's how we are with our strengths. They're usually a mystery to us. On top of that, most of the feedback we get from friends, family, loved ones, teachers, is about our weaknesses, not our strengths. And this makes sense too, It's a lot more obvious when you mess something up than when you do something really awesome. And even if you're not getting feedback externally, it's internal. Most of us, when we screw up, we kind of beat ourselves up. And, long story short, we end up, over time, just getting farther and farther out of our strengths. And that's a shame. Because when a person is operating in their particular area of talent, just amazing things start to happen. Pieces fall into place, things click. You end up producing your best work ever, and even better, it doesn't feel like work. Whatever you're doing is so much a part of who you are that it's almost effortless. So we've got a couple pieces of information here. We've got these two groups of people that the relationship between them basically determines how far and fast we can progress as a species. And we've got the fact that most of us are not working in our area of highest strength, which is where all the magic happens. So what would happen if these two groups of people could communicate with each other, cooperate, learn to actually appreciate and value the various gifts that we have to offer? What if instead of kind of chasing our tail, focusing on these little weaknesses that need to be covered up, we focused on our strengths and built them up to a powerful level? I have a couple suggestions that hopefully might head us in that direction. First of all, I want to address the 75% of us that feel basically like they're kind of part of their human race, like everybody else. Go easy on the weirdos. They have so many amazing gifts that they desperately need to share with everyone. And I've talked to a lot of them. They're mostly pretty cool people. The problem is you don't know how to talk to them so that they'll listen. And they don't know how to talk to you so that you'll listen. So all I want you to do, as far as it's within your power, is take that first step and open up the lines of communication. Now, I just 10 seconds ago I said that you can't talk to them, they can't talk to you, so how are you supposed to open lines of communication? Fortunately, the answer is actually really simple. The first step is not talking, it's listening. To the 25%, the weirdos in the room, I've probably never met you, never had the pleasure of being able to talk with you, but believe it or not, I actually know quite a few things about who you are and how you operate. I know that most of the time, you walk around with this feeling that you just don't belong. There's some truth in that feeling. You're different than everyone else. It's a fact. When we live with that feeling over a long period of time, most of us respond with the same strategy. We start to blend. We start to hide who we are, and we start to try to project the image that we are just like everyone else. We are the same. When you start to learn a little bit about personality type, one of the amazing things you find out is you are absolutely unique, of course, as is everyone else. And you might feel a little more different from others than the 75 do. The thing is, though, there are literally millions of people out there that see things in a very similar way to you, that feel very similar things to you, that have similar vision, similar insight. They see the world in a similar way. And many of these people are just waiting for you to find them. Because they want to talk to you, find out who you are, find out what you're all about, and share their story with you. So how do we find each other? How do those of us in the weirdo group connect with each other? The answer is we have to stop hiding. We have to stop pretending that we're just like everyone else, because we're not. Stop living a lie. And instead, boldly share yourself with the world. And that's how we find each other. Finally, I want to say something to everyone. When I'm interviewing people, going through the profiling process, helping them find whatever their talent is, there's almost always this question in the back of people's minds. It's not verbal, and I don't think I've ever actually heard anyone say it out loud, but you can tell it's there in the tone of voice they use and the questions they ask and things like that. And that question basically is, am I okay? Am I good enough? In all the hundreds of people that I've talked to, I have never, ever met anyone that did not have an absolutely amazing area of genius inside them. I've met plenty of people that didn't know what it was, didn't know how to find it, but I've never met anyone that did not have it. And I promise you, you have genius inside you too. You're better than okay. You are absolutely brilliant. Please never forget it.